Let's get more insights on President Marcos' state visit to Indonesia and Singapore this week with Kuan School of Public Policy's Professor Eduardo Araral. He joins us now live from Singapore. Professor, let's start off with the issue of Mary Jane Veloso. Do you think that this will ever progress and she will be released with President Marcos now in Indonesia?
Well, we can only hope, Rico, because in Indonesian politics, you have to do it quietly behind closed doors, but they have to follow their own rules as well. One presidential visit may not be necessarily enough to get her released, but to get her case reviewed. The fact that she has not yet been executed means that she has a fighting chance. And I'm sure President Marcos is sensitive to the sentiment of the millions of overseas Filipino workers. And a lot of OFWs, Rico, must be following this case. And hopefully, President Marcos would be able to get her released. If not immediately, at least she gets a fair chance in the Indonesian court. And President Jokowi, Rico is a non-conventional president. He got an audience with President Putin and many other decisions. So he's not a typical politician, Rico.
And of course, Mary Jane Veloso got a stay of her execution during the time of President Aquino. What would a release of Mary Jane Veloso mean for President Marcos?
Well, it's really a big win, Rico, because, there's Mary Jane Veloso exemplifies, the story of many Filipinos who have to go out of the Philippines to work hard, and then they become victims of circumstances. In the case of Mary Jane Veloso, she became a victim of a drug mule of drug traffickers. But so Mary Jane Veloso is the face of OFWs, Rico. So any win for Mary Jane Veloso is a win for the tens and millions of OFWs.
Let's take a look now at the state visit of the president. He is now in the most populous country in Southeast Asia and also the largest economy. And then tomorrow he heads to Singapore, the most modern economy in the region. How significant are these twin visits?
Very significant, Rico, because these are the first two countries he is on his state visit. And before he will visit the United States and China. So to me, it means that ASEAN is very important in the foreign policy pillar of the Philippines, and also the fact that Singapore hosts a lot of 200,000 overseas Filipino workers. And I think it's a major constituency for President Marcos. And the fact that neighborhood first, he will discuss defense, diplomacy, agriculture, OFWs. These are topics that are close to his heart. So this is very important, Rico, because this is the first visit. This has an important signaling value, Rico.
Absolutely. A lot of memorandum of agreements were signed today in Indonesia, from counterterrorism, defense and security, cultural cooperation, the economy. But the bottom line is, Professor, trade and business deals that will create new jobs for our kababayans here at home. There are still millions of Filipinos who are unemployed.
Absolutely, Rico. Singapore is a financial hub, so the Philippines needs a lot of money to pay for its PPP investments. There are many laws passed during President Duterte's administration, like the Public Services Act, Ease of Doing Business. Now is the right time to tell the business community, especially those in Singapore, that the Philippines is open for business, that the economy can grow, so we prevent more OFWs from going abroad when the economy grows, Rico.
But how important is the Hague ruling of 2016 for the Indonesians and for the Singaporeans, and for that to be at the top of President Marcos Jr.'s agenda with the leaders of these two countries?
Very important, Rico, because, as a small country, Singapore wants to have a rule of law. For Indonesia, as a big country, it abides by the rule of law. For the Philippines already won the case in the Hague ruling. So yes, the Philippines should reaffirm the Hague ruling when it visits. But of course, this is just one dimension of our foreign relations with China. The South China Sea is an important but not the only dimension of this relationship, Rico.
Do you think that the Indonesian and the Singaporean leaders will at least hint or give President Marcos Jr. some advice to give China a deadline to respect the 2016 Hague decision before his term ends in 2028?
Not likely, Rico. These countries observe this, non-interference and not giving any advice to other countries. I think they are sensitive to that because these countries also don't want to be given advice by other countries. But the Philippines understands that this is an ASEAN thing. It has to be handled sensibly. There are explorations in the Natuna area of Indonesia, so Indonesia is also concerned with this. So this is an important issue, but this is not the only issue that affects ASEAN, Rico.
What about the code of conduct, Professor? ASEAN continues to wait for this long-awaited code of conduct for the South China Sea with China. Do you think this will ever materialize?
Much of that would depend on how China would respond to the existing proposals. China does not want the United States in that code of conduct. China has specific requests that is difficult for ASEAN countries to meet. But the important thing, Rico, is that they come back, they talk again. Maybe they can find some solutions to some tricky problems. There's no way out to it but to continue to sit down and talk, Rico.
Hopefully, this agreement will see the light of day sooner rather than later. Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Professor Eduardo Araral joining us from Singapore. Thank you for your insights.